Good evening. There may be some people here who really meant to go to widespread panic, and you may have the idea that this is appropriate at this point, but it's not. The widespread panic is outside in a different place. I want to pick up on what was mentioned here by Eisenhower. Since public opinion is the only force that has any validity in democracy, it must be an informed public opinion. My friends, this is the 48th anniversary of my arrival in Washington from my native New York. I've seen a lot of change in those years, but there's one change that dwarfs all the others in significance, and that is that we no longer have, in any real sense, a free media. That is really big. And that's largely why we're here tonight, and why the alternative media that is so active right around here and elsewhere, why it plays such a major role and must. Not only is the media derelict, but I have to say that the history books, they're not so good. And let me explain, or let me give you an example of something I learned, not in college, not in graduate school, but only years later. It's a quotation from George Kennan, who was the first leader of the State Department policy planning staff. This was the first paper that the policy planning staff of the State Department wrote, and Kennan was the author. In 1948, we had emerged successful from World War II. We had not been attacked. We were pretty much the sole remaining superpower in the world. Does that sound familiar? Okay, now what did we decide to do with that? Well, we decided that we would, well, you can read it there. We only had 50% of the world's natural resources, 6.3% of the population only, and so the whole idea would be to maintain this disproportionality, right? I refer you to the last sentence there. The day is not far off when we will have to deal in straight power concepts. Witness what Gareth has just been telling you. So, where are we? We're in the third resource war of the 21st century. Oil, no question, that's important, and natural gas. Permanent military bases? Well, now we have the president of Afghanistan saying publicly that the US is leaning on him real hard for permanent military bases, and our own defense minister, our own defense secretary, Robert Gates, is all but saying that we're pressuring the Iraqis for the same thing. Permanent, I'm sorry, I didn't mean permanent military bases. The Pentagon doesn't say permanent anymore. They say enduring military bases. Believe me, follows enduring military base. Give me a break. What's the difference between a permanent military base and an enduring one? That's what we get caught up in the discussion in Washington. Now, I have learned in my old age that the real wisdom comes from my grandchildren. I have two in Oakland who, every time I go there, they seem to tell me something new. I was with Ronan's four-year-old nursery school, and after I watched him for 2 hours and his little friends, I asked the teacher, I said, now, what do you hope to teach these children? I mean, really, what can you hope to teach 4-year-olds? And she didn't bat an eye. She said, oh, it's very simple. I come on over to this table. You see, we have 8 toys on this table. We put 12 children around the table, and we teach them that you have to share. I said to myself, wow. Obviously, Bush and Cheney didn't go to this particular nursery school. And I think not many Americans went to this nursery school, because we do still have dominion over a far disproportionate amount of the world's resources. Now, Claire, his older sister, and this goes back 8 years, when she was 4, she was watching me on television, and she ran to my daughter Kathleen, and she said, "Mommy, Mommy, that was Grandpa." And Kathleen said, "Yeah, that was Grandpa." And Claire said, "Well, Mommy, that means the other people are real too." Now that's, that's cute and all, but think about what that means. If you don't know someone in the picture, if you don't have any direct experience of what's going on, the other people are not real too, okay? I'm going to ask for a slide in just a second on a gentleman named General Taguba, but before I do, I want to just set the stage, because he was the only general in our army to conduct a honest evaluation of what happened at Abu Ghraib. He came up with conclusions that damned the army and the defense establishment hierarchy. He sharply criticized the higher-ups of the Bush administration for creating the conditions that permitted what had happened there. What did they do? Rather than thank him for upholding the army, he was sort of asked to retire. In an interview with Cy Hirsch, he recounts sitting in the back of the Mercedes by the head of the Mercedes used by the head of CENTCOM. In those days, it was General Abizaid. And Abizaid turns to Taguba and he says, "General, I want you to know that you and your report will be investigated." And Taguba said to Cy Hirsch, he said, "You know, I've been in the Army 32 years by then, and it was the first time that I thought I was in the mafia."
Maybe that's true.
32 years, first time I thought I was in the mafia. Now, what gave General Taguba, what gave him the wherewithal, what gave him the strength and the insight to do the right thing? Well, could we have this slide? I think explains a lot. Personal experience. May we have the next one, please? Since I was educated by Jesuits, I usually have to give them a plug of some kind, and this fellow has it down right. He's talking about only when the heart is touched by direct experience, personal involvement with innocent suffering, with the injustice that others suffer. Well, that's the catalyst. That's the catalyst to action. And that's what Taguba had. And that's what my granddaughter Claire is talking about. And that's what Bradley Manning had. As some of you know, Bradley Manning watched young people be wrapped up by the Iraqi authorities that we put in power, wrapped up for writing a term paper critical of the government, and thrown into prisons where they were sure to be tortured, because that was Rumsfeld's policy. As long as it's Iraqi on Iraqi, the US soldiers didn't have to do anything, except report it to the Iraqi authorities who were authorizing the torture. So Bradley Manning, at the tender age of 22, saw that this was wrong and saw that he needed to do something about it. Why? Well, not only because he had access to all these cables, but because he saw it. He had personal insight here, personal involvement with innocent suffering. Now, it gets worse, folks. When we talk about four-star generals, it gets worse. And I'd like to go back to Vietnam just for a second to tell you a little bit about General Westmoreland, who was the head of our troops there, and how he looked at the world. May we have that, please?
computer figured out the ballistics, the airspeed, the slant range, and dropped the bombs when we got to the appropriate point, in whichever kind of attack we'd selected, whether it be flying straight and level or tossing our bombs out. So it was very much of a technical expertise thing. I was a good pilot. You know, I had a lot of pride in my ability to fly.
Well, the Oriental doesn't put the same high price on life as does the Westerner. Life is plentiful, life is cheap in the Orient. And as the philosophy of the Orient expresses it, life is not important.
General Westmoreland, despite the 10 stripes of merit badges and other ribbons, was not only a racist, he was a liar. And I could have proved it halfway through the war. I could have, if I had the courage of Bradley Manning, given to the New York Times a cable that showed that Westmoreland and his deputy, General Abrams, were lying through their teeth.